So sorry if the lighting in here is a little bit weird, still trying to figure that out, so just bear with me a little bit. This whole office is in the middle of getting renovated, so it's going to look better and better as time goes on, so just stick with me. It's going to look sweet in here, it's going to sound good. Everything about it is going to be top tier, I promise you. But you guys are not here to hear me nerd out about my tech gear, so let's get into the video. Which today we're doing the top 20 running backs. If you didn't see my last video, that's the 1 through 10. Definitely go check that out if you haven't already. Man, going through these running backs, honestly, tough, especially at this point in the offseason. Like trying to decide who's going to be the running back 18 in mid-June, not ideal. So take everything that I say here with a grain of salt because it's very likely that stuff is going to change. This is just how I'm feeling now. I think it's always super valuable to do that. I also feel like this year's running back class is a little bit different than the previous years, whereas I feel like the top end was always really good. And then once you got into that like running back 13 and beyond range, it was kind of just a shit show. Whereas this year, I think the top end is not as clear, but you have running backs into the 20s who I think are going to be really good values and really good picks. It's going to be fascinating watching this play out in drafts. Besides all of that, let's get into it. First up at my running back 11, we got Aaron Jones of the Packers. Over the past 3 seasons, he's finished as an RB1 every single season, and he's 7th in receptions over that time and also 2nd in receiving touchdowns for running backs. Now, this is somebody who I initially had a lot lower in my rankings as the offseason started, since I think it's going to be a pretty even 50-50 split with A.J. Dillon. But obviously, the best wide receiver in football, Javonte Adams, is no longer with the Packers. This has given the Packers the 5th most vacated targets of all teams this year. If you heard me talk about that in my last video, you know that I really like that for running backs because those vacated targets actually tend to go towards them. And when you have somebody as talented as Aaron Jones, I think his ceiling is extremely high. He also has trust with Aaron Rodgers, which is a huge thing for him. Rookie wide receivers are known not to produce with Aaron Rodgers because that trust hasn't been built yet. So there's a really high likelihood that Aaron Jones is 1st or 2nd in receptions on the team this year. The reason I have him ranked at 11 and not higher is because of A.J. Dillon. I think that a lot of the goal line rushing work is going to go to him, or it's going to go 50-50, but I just don't see him being a workhorse, even though he's normally not, but it's definitely going to go down. And if you watch A.J. Dillon in the field, I mean, that dude's a beast. The fact that they even play the same position is honestly hilarious, especially if you look at pictures of them next to each other. But great offense, tons of targets, crazy talent. I love Aaron Jones. I might even put him higher as the offseason progresses. Next up, I got James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals. Now, he's someone who actually had a lot higher and has dropped over the offseason. The reason I liked him so much was because they gave him a contract, which means he's going to get to work. And he's also tied to the Arizona Cardinals offense, which is a great offense. He was also 2nd in the league last year in rushing touchdowns, but that's not normally something I try to stick by because it's not normally a sticky stat, especially when he had about 750 rushing yards. Like that is not something that you really want to predict and normally would worry me a ton. The reason I liked him so much is because Chase Edmonds was there and he left. Chase Edmonds had over 50 targets last year and he only played in 12 games. And for a while, they didn't bring anyone else in. They didn't really draft anyone besides Keontae Ingram late. But recently they brought in Darrell Williams, who actually had more targets last year than Chase Edmonds, surprisingly, but he played in about 5 or 6 more games than him. So not that surprising, but what it really shows is that Darrell Williams definitely has the receiving upside, or should I say receiving ability, where he's not going to overtake James Conner, but he's going to basically slide right into that Chase Edmonds roles and get I think in my mind, a pretty similar workload to him, which definitely takes down James Conner's upside away. And the fact that he had such little rushing yards and normally everything that leads to just negative regression overall, it's made me drop him a little bit, but he's still going to get all of the goal line work. He's still going to get most of the rushing work and a lot of receiving work, part of a great offense. I mean, he was 5th last year in total fantasy points and fantasy points per game. And over the second half of the year, he was 3rd in total fantasy points. So he's still got it. I mean, we've seen it. And I think he can not quite do what he did last year, but he can still be an RB1 in my opinion. And that's why I got him ranked here. After this, I think it really starts to get a lot muckier, where you could see a number of different people ranked here. I currently have Nick Chubb ranked as my running back 13. This is just so tough because the whole Deshaun Watson situation. I mean, in the middle of June, we right now have no idea what's going on with that. I don't want to speculate on it. That is not my place to talk. I'm just going to let the NFL and the law figure it out, then we can react to it. If Deshaun's able to play this next year, then he's going to skyrocket because he's finished at this spot or better over the past 3 seasons, and his offense will be significantly better if Deshaun is there, obviously. If Deshaun isn't there, then we're probably going to have to drop him some depending on who's going to be playing. If it's Baker, we could probably leave him around here because that's who he's had, but we don't know. There's just so many question marks. I kind of have him ranked here as a placeholder, and then he can go up and down depending on what actually happens. This is just where I would take him right now with that risk baked into his price. He's only had 4 games without Baker, so it's really hard to get an idea as how good he would be with somebody. But yeah, that's where I currently have him ranked. Moving on to running back 14, who is Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants. Now, Saquon might be the most talented running back we've ever seen. I mean, I don't really know, but talent does not always lead to production, as we can obviously see it with him. He's really struggled with injury after his first year in the NFL. And last year he was coming off a torn ACL, which normally people don't do their best directly after the torn ACL. It's normally the second year after, which would be this year for him. So that gives a little bit of hope. I think Saquon is really dependent just on his offense and what they can do if they can take a step forward, which is worrisome for me because they were second to last in the NFL in offensive points last year. They don't have a great offensive line. Their weapons, what was the stat? It was like they had the highest paid receiving room, but they also had the least amount of touchdowns in the NFL, something like that, which is just ridiculous. The offense better, but it's really up to Daniel Jones if he's going to take that step forward. And he's going to get a full workload. He's going to get as many touches as he can. He's going to get that workhorse workload. He's going to get the receptions. He's going to get all of that. That is not the issue I'm worrying about. I'm worrying about first him being healthy and how good this offense is going to be. If this offense could be a top 15 offense in the NFL, I think Saquon finishes way higher than this, but I don't know how you predict that with Daniel Jones and everybody else that's a part of this offense and what they've shown over the past couple years. I mean, I also just have such a weak spot for the talent of Saquon that I want to see him be that rookie year self again. And I don't know if we're ever going to get that again, but I hope we can. But I do think he has some upside because if that offense can take the next step forward, then he's going to be outstanding, but that's to be determined. So for right now, I'll leave him right here because he's going to be getting the majority of the workload. But yeah, that's where I have him ranked for now. Next up at running back 15, I have Javonte Williams. Javonte. I love this dude. He's one of my favorite players to watch. He is somebody who I thought I might have had ranked in my top 5 running backs when the offseason started. I mean, the issue is really with Melvin Gordon. They re-signed Melvin Gordon this year, and last year they literally had the exact same amount of touches. And if they re-signed him, why should they change that? I mean, it worked out great for them. They had the same amount of rushes, same amount of efficiency. I mean, I definitely think it's going to be a very similar backfield split, maybe with a slight lean towards Javonte. I just think Javonte is significantly more talented at this point in his career than Melvin Gordon. Their offense is also going to be so much better now that they have Russell Wilson. So that is a huge upgrade for both of them. Also, with splitting the workload, Javonte Williams still led the entire NFL in broken tackles, and he had over 40 plus receptions, which is normally the number you want to see to be a running back 1. So there's a lot of indicators of him being an absolute beast, but is he going to get the workload for it? Like, that's the issue. I've flip-flopped him and Saquon because they're in the 2 opposite positions. Saquon's going to get all the work he can handle, but his offense sucks. Javonte's going to be splitting the workload, but his offense is amazing. So who do you take between them? I don't really know. I currently have Saquon because a lot of times the workload is a more important thing, but in the end, they're going to be in the same tier, so it's really who just falls to you. That's the beauty of the tiers, is that you don't really need to decide who's better. You just need to get one of them because you can view them very similarly, like I did with these 2 people. I actually view the next person also in a very similar light, which is Ezekiel Elliott. A lot of people are really out on Zeke, and I get it because of how he looked last year, but he still finished 6th in total fantasy points and 12th in fantasy points per game. That discrepancy between total fantasy points and fantasy points per game really just shows his ability to play in every game, because that's why he was able to finish 6th, is that he just played in every game. But on average, he was barely a running back 1, but still a running back 1, even after such a terrible year. Now, they lost Amari Cooper, so definitely a lot of air yards to go. Hopefully some towards Zeke, but the issue with Zeke is Tony Pollard. I mean, Tony Pollard just looks like he has so much more juice at this point. I definitely think his workload is going to go up this year, and specifically, I think he's going to get a lot of the receiving work, whereas Zeke, I think, will be more the goal line in between the 20s grinder, which is normally the less valuable position on the offense, but given how good I think their offense will be, I think he's going to score a ton of touchdowns and get a lot of work and has a good chance to finish in that top 15 running back range. So I think if you can get him around here, he's a great value. There is a lot of risk, but I think that's baked into his price at the running back 16. But yeah, moving on. Next running back at 17, I got David Montgomery. Monty is also someone a little bit interesting just because I know some people that absolutely love this guy, and I know some of my friends have been talking about getting him already on their team this next year, but I don't really get it. I mean, They have a terrible offensive line. They were 31st last year per PFF. They also have Justin Fields, who is one of the most athletic quarterbacks in the league, but that leads to him stealing goal line rushes and goal line touchdowns. Plus, their offense just isn't very good with him, or at least hasn't shown to be very good with him. The one redeeming thing is that he's going to have one of the biggest workloads in all of the NFL, which, like I've said, is arguably the most important thing for running back. So that's why I'm still taking him, relatively high. But that's what I was talking about earlier. I think that there's people later on for running backs who still have a lot of value, like David Montgomery and the rest of people coming up. I went back and looked at all the games that Montgomery and Justin Fields played together and where they both played over 50% of the snaps. And in those games, David Montgomery averaged 10.6 half PPR fantasy points per game. That would have been 28th for running backs in points per game. So I think you can kind of see where the risk is and what could happen here. That's why I have him a little bit lower than consensus, I think, but still a great running back who I think is a good pick around here. Moving on to running back 18, I got Breshad Hall. The issue with Brees is that he's on the Jets and he has Michael Carter. The Jets have not been a good offense and I don't even know how long. And Michael Carter was pretty solid last year, but I think Brees is just on a completely different level, with the draft capital they gave him and his athletic profile. I mean, once the Jets see these two guys running against each other, they're going to have no option but to give Brees 65 to 70% of the work, which is what a workhorse running back is nowadays. I also went back all the way to 2010 and looked at the top 15 running backs. There was not a single year where a rookie running back didn't finish within the top 15. And I think Breshad Hall is pretty clearly the running back one in this class and will finish as such. I mean, just going based off of that, he should probably be ranked higher, but I get it. I understand it. I think for the time being, this is a good spot, but I definitely could see him going higher. I don't know if it's a little bit of bias because I have him on my dynasty team, but I'm absolutely in love with him as a prospect. And if the Jets make any step forward, he could easily be an RB1 this year. So yeah, I'll be taking him here. Now, running back 19, 20, and 21, I'm actually going to talk about together because I can't really figure them out, and I have put them right here and switched in between them so many different times that I think I should just talk about them all together. Right now, I currently have it ranked J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, and Travis Etienne. I think it makes a lot of sense why I've grouped these three people together. They're all coming off of season-long ending injuries last year and all coming into massive question marks this year. J.K. Dobbins is obviously going to be the workhorse leader of his team, but he's with Lamar Jackson, who tends to steal a lot of rushes, and Gus Edwards is also coming back, so it's hard to really know with him, but the Ravens do have the fourth most vacated targets, so he should get a lot of receiving work, or at least a lot more than he had seen in his rookie year. The Ravens were also 6th in offensive yards per game, but 17th in points per game. That's a clear indication of positive touchdown regression coming, which will definitely go towards the way of J.K. Dobbins when it does come. I also just love him as a talent, and we have seen that the torn ACL is not what it used to be, so that's why I currently have him ranked first out of those guys, but whoever you want to take, go for it. The next person I have is Cam Akers. He's coming off an Achilles, which is probably the worst injury in all of football, specifically for running backs, but he was able to play last year. I mean, he was pretty terrible once he played in the playoffs last year, but he came back and played after about 5 months from tearing his Achilles. Now, in the games that he did play, he averaged 16.5 attempts per game and 43 yards, which is about 2.5 yards per carry. So, I mean, pretty bad. And he was a part of a great offense, which is even more worrisome. But he is part of a great offense. And we've heard them talk about how much the coaching staff loves this guy and trusts this guy and how much of a freak athlete he is. So it's really hard to know. There's some people that have him ranked way higher because of his talent, because of his offense. But I'm really worried about the Achilles injury. D'Onta Foreman was the most recent and pretty much the only example of someone we've seen recover and play well as a running back with Achilles injury, but he tore it like 5 years before he even showed out again. I mean, granted, Cam Akers and D'Onta Foreman are completely different athletes, but the last person is Travis Etienne, who didn't play his rookie year last year, but was drafted as a first-round running back, and he has the connection with Trevor Lawrence from college, and James Robinson tore his Achilles last year, which I was just talking about with Cam Akers and how much that worries me. Now, there's a lot of talk about him already coming back and being ready for training camp and all of that, but it's hard for me to imagine James Robinson coming back and being very effective, especially in the first half of the season. And Travis Etienne's profiles as a 3-down workhorse running back, especially getting a lot of receiving work. Like Urban Meyers, I think, said that he drafted him to pretty much get receiving work, and I know that guy's an absolute clown, but he wasn't wrong about that. He is a great receiver, and he can definitely be utilized as such. and Trevor Lawrence loves him, and I think we'll use him a lot too. But those 3 guys I view very similarly, so whoever you want to take, go for it. What I'm going to be looking to do is whoever falls to me. That's what the tiers are for. If all 3 of them are there, I might go a different direction. But that's kind of how I'm feeling with right them, and I kind of just wanted to mention them all together because I didn't really know how to rank them at the time being. But yeah, there's my top, I guess, 21 running backs to start off the offseason. If you're watching this, thank you for tuning in to another video. There's going to be more of them coming soon. I'm hoping to get 3 out next week, but we will see. Let me know what you disagree with, agree with. If not, see you in the next one. Peace.